In exactly 47 seconds, Jasmine Crockett hit play and history split open on live TV. A hidden camera feed from room 13C at Mar-a-Lago flickered on screen. Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, a blurred young girl. As the footage rolled, Trump lunged forward, knocking over his mic, shouting, "Turn it off!" But it was too late. What did Jasmine show America? That made a former president lose control in front of the entire world. The red tally light blinked once, then locked on. Live, no delay, no edits. The Rayburn House Oversight Chamber, normally a stiff parade of formality and tired protocol, now vibrated with silent heat. Overhead rigs hummed like distant wasps. Behind the rows of nameplates and microphones, a dozen news producers clenched their earpieces and muttered countdowns. This wasn't just a hearing. It was a moment the nation had been waiting for. Jasmine Crockett stepped into frame like a shadow breaking through the spotlight. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She moved like a woman carrying something heavier than evidence, like she was carrying a wound. Her navy blue blazer sliced cleanly across her figure. But the real weapon wasn't what she wore. It was in her right hand, a small, scuffed red USB drive. No label, no markings, just the silent promise of revelation. Across from her, seated with legs crossed and arms draped over his counsel's table, was Donald J. Trump. His expression? A smirk carved in granite. His body leaned back, as if to say, "You can't touch me." Flanked by 2 lawyers and 3 aides, he tapped his fingers idly against the desk, pretending not to watch the USB. But he watched. Oh, he watched. The chairman gavelled the session open, but no one really heard the speech. All eyes, even behind the cameras, were fixed on the space between Crockett's fingers. Because that was where the tremor lived. A whisper had already spread across social media hours before the hearing. Rumors that Jasmine possessed unreleased footage from inside Mar-a-Lago. Some said it involved a locked room. Others said it was tied to Epstein. But no one had confirmed it, until now. And Crockett wasn't blinking. She took her seat slowly, placed the USB on the table like a live grenade. Trump shifted. A flicker of his eye. A microsecond of unease, caught on high definition, archived forever. What could possibly be on that USB that made the most powerful man in America break into a sweat before the hearing even began? Jasmine did not touch the USB. Not yet. She leaned forward, eyes fixed on Trump like a lens tightening on its subject. Her voice came low and deliberate, the kind of calm that makes rooms go still. "Mr. Trump, could you tell the committee what room 13C at Mar-a-Lago was used for?" Trump gave a theatrical pause, then tilted his head with an exaggerated grin. "Room 13C? You mean the broom closet?" He glanced toward the cameras and laughed like he had just won the moment. "Seriously, Congresswoman, is this what we are doing now?" A few chuckles trickled from his side of the aisle, but they died quickly. Jasmine didn't blink. She opened a slim folder, yellowed with time. Her fingers found a tabbed page and slid it forward without fanfare. "This is a maintenance log from Mar-a-Lago, dated between 2001 and 2005. Trump's smile twitched, just a little. Jasmine turned to the page. "It records multiple entries into room 13C, she said. Entries with no staff IDs, no security timestamps, no guest names. But when cross-referenced with Jeffrey Epstein's guest logs, some of those times match." She let the weight of that statement settle in the air. There was a shift in the room. A few aides stopped writing. Senators leaned in. A Fox News producer adjusted his earpiece. Jasmine continued as if she didn't notice, but her eyes were locked, her delivery exact. She turned to another page. On July 18th, 2002, this entry appears. "Camera interference in room 13C. Urgent override requested. Filed at 9:12 p.m. She looked up again. That override came less than 2 hours before a visitor arrived. An underage girl, undocumented by staff, but named 3 times in Epstein's flight records. Trump's jaw clenched. One of his lawyers leaned in and whispered something. He didn't respond. The smirk was gone. Jasmine laid the document flat on the table for the cameras. "So tell us again, Mr. Trump," she said, voice unwavering. "What exactly is room 13C? And why would anyone override security footage in a private presidential resort right before an unregistered minor walks in. She let the silence stretch. 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then she leaned back slowly in her chair and spoke one last time. And what happened the night that camera was supposed to be off, but wasn't? The image of Trump and Epstein froze on screen. Still, unblinking, undeniable. The silence in the chamber was thick. You could feel it crawl over the walls, press into every corner. Jasmine sat motionless, eyes locked on the man across from her. Trump blinked first. Suddenly he stood. "This is fake." His voice thundered through the room, wild and cracking. One of his lawyers leapt to his feet, trying to regain control. "We invoke executive privilege. This material is classified, inadmissible, politically motivated." The chairman leaned into his mic, unmoved. "The Congresswoman may proceed." That was all Jasmine needed. No smile, no celebration, just a nod, small and lethal. She reached for a second document, a contract, yellowed, official, signed and initialed. "This is a Mar-a-Lago staff agreement from 2003, she said. "It contains a specific clause prohibiting any disclosure of surveillance footage from room 13C. She slid the copy toward the camera. Trump's lips curled, his fists clenched. "Lies, I never signed off on that. This is all fabricated. I want the feed cut. Cut it now." His voice cracked again. Sweat formed along his brow. For the first time all day, his confidence vanished. One of the aides behind him tried to reach for a water bottle. Another whispered, "Sir, please sit." But Trump was no longer performing. He was unraveling, and the whole world could see it. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply looked at him like she already knew the ending. Her voice was even, cold, surgical. "A man doesn't demand the camera be turned off unless he already knows what it captured." A ripple ran through the crowd. Viewers across the country leaned closer to their screens. It wasn't just a political spectacle anymore. It was something rawer, deeper, personal. Trump pointed a shaking finger toward Jasmine. "You're playing dirty, Crockett. This is a witch hunt." She met his gaze without blinking. "If the truth is dirty," she said, "maybe it's because it was buried too long. Why would a man fight so hard to silence a camera? Unless he feared what it saw." The screen still held Trump's frozen face. The courtroom hadn't moved, but Jasmine had. She tapped her mic once, just enough to shift attention, then spoke calmly. "We now call a remote witness. He's coming forward today for the first time." The monitors flickered again. Then came the grainy image of a man sitting in a small, dim room. Shadows cloaked his face. His name appeared on screen. Luis Ortega, former audio and surveillance technician, Mar-a-Lago. His voice cracked on the first word, then steadied. "I worked the West Wing cameras. I installed most of them myself. Room 13C had a hidden ceiling mic. I was asked to disable it. July 18, 2002. Trump stiffened. Jasmine said nothing. Luis inhaled, swallowed. "He asked me to kill the feed that night. Said it was just for privacy, then paid me $25,000 in cash." He paused, then added, "But I made a backup." Every sound in the chamber vanished. Even the cameras seemed to go still. Trump's color drained. One aide reached for him, but his hand waved her off. Luis looked straight at the lens. "I didn't know what it would capture, but something felt wrong. My daughter was 12 at the time. The thought of her in that hallway," his voice caught again, "that night haunted me. I left 6 months later. I tried to forget." He looked down, then back up. "But you can't erase what you know. Not if you're a father." Trump leaned forward, fists clenched. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Jasmine didn't play the rest of the footage. Not yet. She let the fear do its work. Let the truth echo without a sound. She looked to the committee, then to the camera, then straight to America. What kind of country protects the man who ordered silence, but not the man brave enough to break it? Trump hadn't moved in nearly a minute. His hands were locked together, his eyes stuck to the table, like looking up would make the moment real. Jasmine did it for him. She reached for another folder. Not thick, not dramatic, just one page, one printout. "This email," she said, holding it between her fingers, "was sent on March 2nd, 2021. 8 weeks after Trump left office. She read the subject line aloud, clear and steady. 13C footage, urgent containment required. Trump didn't flinch, but his legal team did. One attorney leaned in fast, whispering, "We need a recess." The chairman refused. "Proceed, Congresswoman." Jasmine turned the email toward the cameras. The sender, Trump's former campaign manager. The recipient, a private surveillance contractor based in Florida. She read the first line. "If any part of the Mar-a-Lago hallway file still exists, lock it down. No copies, no leaks. This could burn us." Gasps rippled from the press section. Phones lit up. Hashtags were already forming. Jasmine stepped away from her seat, not for show, but to look straight into the camera. No podium, no filter. This isn't about Democrats. It isn't about Republicans. It's about something deeper, something every American understands. She paused just long enough for people at home to lean forward. It's about trust, about power, about what men do when they think no one's watching, and what they'll pay to keep it that way. Trump clenched his jaw. His foot tapped, fast and furious, beneath the table. But he stayed silent. Jasmine held the email up one more time. America was never supposed to see this, and now it has. She turned and walked back to her chair, calm, controlled. "What happens," she said, "when the firewall finally falls, and the American people see what's behind it?" The hearing room was still reeling from the last blow, but Jasmine wasn't done. She rose again, this time slower, with something different in her voice. Not just resolve, grief, controlled, but heavy, the kind that doesn't show unless you've carried it too long. "We now call Maya Reyes." The room didn't react at first, until the screen behind Jasmine came alive. A live feed. A woman seated alone in a plain chair, her hands resting calmly on her lap. No legal team, no makeup, just a name, finally being said in full. Maya Reyes, 34 years old. No longer Jane Doe. Her voice didn't tremble. "I was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein from age 13 to 17. I was flown to Palm Beach, to New York, and once to Mar-a-Lago." The name landed like a stone. Maya looked straight ahead, never down. "I remember the hallway. I remember the door. Room 13C. From beside her chair, she lifted a folder. Inside was one sheet of paper, aged, creased, drawn in pencil. Jasmine didn't have to describe it. The camera zoomed in. The sketch wasn't perfect, but it was clear. A man with a square jaw, thick eyebrows, heavy around the eyes. The resemblance was chilling. Jasmine didn't name him. She didn't need to. The entire room recognized the face. The entire country would too. Maya held it in her lap, her voice quieter now. "I made this when I was 15. A counselor asked me to draw what I remembered. I was told someone would look into it. No one ever did." She looked straight into the lens. "He told me I'd be safe because he was famous, that I was lucky, that if I said anything, no one would believe a girl like me." Trump didn't speak. He didn't blink. His lawyers shifted nervously, but no one interrupted. "I remember his watch, his voice, and how he smelled like cigar smoke and aftershave." Her lips tightened. "I was told not to cry, not to speak, and never to look him in the eye." Jasmine placed her hand on the desk and leaned forward, just slightly. "Thank you, Maya." She turned back to the cameras, back to the millions watching, then asked the one question no one in power had ever dared to answer. Why did no one ever ask what she saw in that room? Until now. Maya's testimony faded from the monitors, but the room didn't breathe. Not yet. It was as if something sacred had been cracked open, and no one knew how to look away. Jasmine remained still, eyes forward. But she wasn't finished. Behind Trump, Lara Trump sat motionless, her hands clenched around a bald tissue. The cameras, sharp and unforgiving, caught the way her jaw trembled. She dabbed beneath one eye, then turned her face away from the hearing floor. But it was too late. Millions had seen it. The grief, the fear, the shame. Jasmine stood again, slower this time, with a folder thinner than the rest. She opened it without flair and held up a single sheet. Then she paused and asked the question that no one in that room was ready for. When even blood turns away from power, What's left to protect him? This deposition, she said clearly, was taken in 2015 during a civil case involving the Epstein estate. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her words did the cutting on their own. The witness, Tiffany Ariana Trump, was 21 at the time. Trump shifted in his seat. One hand gripped the edge of the table. His expression didn't move, but something behind his eyes flickered. Jasmine continued, turning to a marked section on the page. These are her exact words recorded under oath. She looked at the page. I don't want to talk about the island. Ever. A ripple went through the room. Soft, immediate, audible. Trump slammed his hand on the table. That's irrelevant, he barked, voice rising in pitch. That was sealed. You're not supposed to bring that up. Jasmine didn't blink. She turned toward the chairman but never lost her composure. Then unseal it, she said simply. Gasps, murmurs. Even some of the Republican staffers behind Trump stopped typing. Jasmine took one step toward the camera. Every time a young girl begged for help, there was someone more powerful deciding it was too inconvenient to listen. She turned back to Trump. There are some silences that don't come from shame. They come from trauma, from survival. And if your own daughter couldn't say the words, maybe it's time the rest of us did. Trump's face flushed deeper. His lawyer leaned in fast. But Jasmine wasn't looking at him anymore. She stared directly into the lens. What truth could hurt a father more than the silence of his own daughter? The chamber didn't make a sound, but every breath inside it tightened. Jasmine reached for the USB again, slowly, deliberately, and inserted it without saying a word. The monitor flashed once, then filled with static. The timestamp appeared in the corner. July 18th, 2002. The hallway came into view. Narrow, dim, marble floors reflecting faint overhead lights. At the far end was room 13C, just a door like any other, until now. The camera angle was tilted slightly, like it had been hidden behind a wall vent. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then Epstein entered from the left, confident, smiling. Behind him, a taller figure in a cream-colored blazer followed closely. He turned his face toward the camera, clear, unmistakable. Donald Trump. Between them walked a girl, young, shoulders hunched, face blurred by digital protection, but her body language told its own story. She didn't speak. She didn't resist. She just walked because they expected her to. They stopped outside the door. Trump turned toward the hallway camera, stared directly into the lens and said, "You didn't cut the feed yet?" And then the screen went black. The sound in the chamber dropped out. No pens, no whispers. No, just the weight of what everyone had seen and what none of them could now unsee. Someone in the back row gasped. A staffer behind the dais mouthed, "Oh my God!" Trump didn't say a word. His hands were gripping the edge of the table, white-knuckled, jaw tight. His lawyer didn't even try to speak. Jasmine didn't react. She let the black screen linger, let the silence stretch like a wire ready to snap. Then she looked across the table, right into the eyes of the man who once called her irrelevant. "Now tell us again, Mr. Trump," she said, calm and level, "why this room was just a broom closet. No theatrics, no anger, just truth, standing still." Outside, the world ignited. Phones lit up. News anchors went silent on live air. Millions of people sat frozen, watching that final frame over and over, waiting for it to change, but knowing it wouldn't. Jasmine folded her hands slowly on the desk, then asked the question the entire country now had to answer. What do we do when the video ends? But the consequences are just beginning. The video was over, but its echo hadn't left the room. Trump still hadn't spoken. His eyes were fixed on the dark screen like he was waiting for it to turn off the rest of the world. But the world was still watching, and Jasmine wasn't done. Not yet. She reached for the final document in front of her. Just one page, folded once, edges creased like it had been handled too many times. No props, no headline, just truth, waiting to be read. She held it between her hands and spoke quietly, but every word sliced through the silence. "This email," she said, "was sent from Jason Miller to a private legal contractor, May 3rd, 2021. She unfolded the page, not for drama, just precision. It reads, and I quote, If the Room 13C tape leaks, 2024 is dead in the water. The chamber cracked open, not with noise but with realization. It wasn't speculation anymore. It was fear in writing from inside the campaign. Intent to hide, strategy to contain, a man running for power, afraid of a 47-second truth. Trump didn't move. His lawyer leaned in fast, whispering something sharp into his ear. But Trump only blinked. His hands, which once slammed tables and pointed fingers, now rested flat and still. Across the country, networks broke in. CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox all confirmed the email within minutes. Anchors stopped mid-sentence, their voices stuttering into raw shock. Social feeds exploded. You could feel the weight of a nation trying to process it all at once. Jasmine didn't look triumphant. She looked steady, focused. She closed the folder and rested both hands on the table. Then she looked across the chamber and into the camera. "This isn't political theater," she said. "This is a reckoning." And for the first time all day, Trump lowered his head. Jasmine's voice softened, not with weakness, but clarity. What if justice doesn't wear a robe, but a navy blue blazer with her head held high? The hearing was over, but the silence it left behind didn't fade. It spread. Within minutes, the 47-second clip was everywhere. Pinned, shared, played on loop. YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, each one drowning in a wave of disbelief. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal, and it was spreading fast. Cable news couldn't keep up. CNN aired it raw. Fox hesitated, then blinked. Even anchors who had defended Trump for years sat frozen, watching a single sentence replay over and over. "You didn't cut the feed yet?" By nightfall, thousands of survivors had spoken. Stories long buried suddenly surfaced. Women, men, teenagers, some anonymous, some defiant, finally saying what they had held inside for years. They weren't looking for justice, just to be heard. Polls shifted before midnight. Independents pulled away. A few Republican lawmakers released statements calling for an immediate investigation. One demanded Trump step down from the 2024 race before sunrise. He didn't respond. Maya Reyes walked out of the hearing alone. No security detail, no speech, just a quiet exit. And still, bystanders stood and clapped. Some cried, some simply nodded. But everyone made space for her. Inside, Jasmine remained seated, calm, composed, her hands still resting on the same desk where the red USB had once been. Trump's chair sat empty, papers scattered, glass untouched. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just looked at the chair across from her, where power once sat, and saw what silence had finally torn down. This wasn't a moment. It was a shift, a turning. And somewhere in that stillness, a question began to rise. Not for politicians, not for pundits, but for the people watching from their living rooms. What would you have done if you had been in Jasmine's seat? She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She didn't beg anyone to believe her. Jasmine Crockett walked into that chamber with one thing: truth, and it was enough to make the ground shake. There was no press conference, no cameras chasing her down the marble hallway, no victory lap, just a quiet exit. One nod to the clerk, one glance at the empty chair she left behind. Then the screen went black. No music, no commentary, just silence. And then, slowly, across the darkness came the words. White, bold, still. Some rooms are never meant to stay locked. The image of that hallway, the sound of his voice, the blurred face of the girl, the way Trump looked into the lens and asked if the feed had been cut. None of it faded. Not from the room, not from the country. This story wasn't just about a USB or a camera or an election. It was about power, how it hides, how it survives, and what it fears most. A woman who wouldn't flinch, a nation that finally looked. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a robe. Sometimes it wears a navy blue blazer and doesn't blink when the world watches. There are moments that need no defense, only the courage to face them without looking away. When one woman didn't shout, didn't rage, but simply revealed the truth, and the entire nation fell silent. We were reminded that truth doesn't need to be loud to be undeniable. Justice doesn't always shout. It enters quietly, and even power remembers to bow. If this story stayed with you, don't just let it fade. Hit subscribe, like, and share so its echo can reach those who still need to hear it. Because when truth walks in, silence no longer feels safe. This story is created for inspiration and reflection. It does not represent any individual or organization. Viewer interpretation and discussion are encouraged, but final responsibility rests with each audience member. Now it's your turn. Which moment struck you deepest? The silence, the truth, or the courage it took to speak?